The Young and the Restless spoilers preview week of November 17 to 21, 2025. As Genoa City moved through another deceptively calm day, the undercurrent of tension running beneath the surface of its polished lives began to sharpen again, signaling that danger, revelation, and heartbreak were converging in ways no one yet fully understood. Fans who believed Matt Clark, now known under the twisted reinvention of Mitch Bacall, had exhausted his appetite for risk would soon discover that the man thrived on crossing lines everyone else feared. His re-emergence was not a tremor but a foreshock, one that hinted at yet another dangerous move simmering just under the horizon. Mitch lived for leverage, for psychological chess, for the thrill of staying 3 steps ahead of anyone foolish enough to believe they understood him. Whatever he planned now promised to carry the same venomous precision that had defined every other disruption he had unleashed upon Genoa City, leaving unanswered questions about who his next target might be and what price they would pay for underestimating him. Meanwhile, Audra Charles, brilliant, calculated, always one heartbeat away from either triumph or self-destruction, began to feel the walls closing in around her. For years she had built her success on a mastery of secrets, both her own and those she extracted from others. Secrets, to Audra, were currency. But currency could also evaporate, collapse, slip from one's grasp when someone else learned how to weaponize it. And now Claire Grace Newman was digging. Not casually, not accidentally, but with the meticulous curiosity of a woman who knew that truth was rarely innocent. Claire had no personal stake in Audra's history. At least not until Holden Novak began sharing pieces of a story far darker than anyone anticipated. When Claire approached Audra with the unsettling confidence of someone holding a blade hidden behind her back, she insinuated that Audra was lucky not to be sitting in a prison cell. It was not a threat delivered for drama's sake, it was a reminder that Audra's past contained shadows she had fought very hard to bury. Claire referenced the version of events Holden had shared. The part where Audra sent him stolen money as some twisted gesture of gratitude. But something in Claire's tone suggested she believed, or perhaps already knew, that Holden's sanitized version of the truth was only a sliver of what had happened. The real story, the unvarnished one, carried a darkness Audra had never intended to see the light of day. Holden Novak, for his part, stood on the opposite end of a heartbreak he had not anticipated. His time with Claire had been intoxicating, fleeting, and built on passion rather than stability. To him, it felt like the beginning of something real. To Claire, it was a moment carved out of confusion and desire, a detour rather than a destination. She admitted openly, to herself if not to him, that part of her questioned whether she feared commitment more than she cared to admit. Claire had always carried the residue of abandonment, instability, and the relentless pressure of living up to the Newman name. Holden represented something easy, reckless, and vibrant, yet unsustainable. And when she withdrew from him, it was with the weight of internal conflict, not malice. She distanced herself not only from Holden but also from Kyle Abbott, whose presence stirred a different kind of emotional turbulence. Kyle reawakened a longing she wasn't ready to face, a vulnerability she had spent years shielding behind sarcasm, ambition, and carefully crafted walls. Avoiding both men wasn't cowardice, it was survival. Claire needed silence, needed space, needed time to navigate the inner fractures Holden had accidentally exposed. But secrets rarely unravel in isolation in Genoa City. The threads of Audra's concealed history, Holden's heartbreak, and Claire's emotional retreat began intertwining in ways none of them foresaw. Audra sensed that Holden had spoken too freely, revealing pieces of a narrative she had manipulated for years. She had trusted him once, trusted his charm, trusted his willingness to bend the rules, trusted that he would never betray her. And yet here he was, offering Claire half-truths that painted Audra as someone desperate enough to send stolen funds as a warped token of gratitude. What Holden left out, what he concealed behind self-serving ambiguity, was the part that could ruin Audra entirely. The part that could end her career, her relationship with Tucker, her carefully curated persona, and her ability to wield power in any boardroom she walked into. Claire's probing questions made Audra feel something unfamiliar, fear. The irony, of course, was that Claire herself was spiraling through a quiet emotional dismantling. She had tasted connection with Holden and recoiled from the intensity of it. She had felt the gravitational pull toward Kyle and feared what surrendering to it would cost her. She was distancing herself not to punish them, but because she had reached that terrifying threshold where desire and fear became indistinguishable. Claire, like so many Newman-adjacent souls before her, was a woman who understood passion but not promise, intimacy but not permanence. Hovering above all these fractured hearts and cracking facades was the looming milestone of Danny Romalotti and Christine Blair's wedding. Their love story, decades in the making, stood in stark contrast to the chaos around them, a symbol of stability, of rediscovery, of the rare second chances that did not collapse under pressure. Their approaching wedding brought warmth to the city, a reminder that even in Genoa City, not all stories were tragedies in disguise. Danny and Cricket glowed with the tender anticipation of two people who had fought their way through life's storms and found each other again, calmer and wiser. While everyone else battled scandal, secrets, and emotional ruin, they stood on the brink of something hopeful, something that promised to anchor them regardless of the chaos erupting around them. Yet even their joy existed in a world where shadows lingered. Mitch Bacall's dangerous plans loomed like a storm building just offshore. Audra's past threatened to erupt at the worst possible moment. Claire's avoidance of both Kyle and Holden hinted at emotional turmoil on a path toward inevitable collision. And Genoa City, ever hungry for drama, waited silently for the moment when all these tangled stories would snap together like a trap closing. The question wasn't whether something explosive was coming, it was which secret, which betrayal, which heartbreak would be the first to detonate, dragging everyone else into the fallout. The slow, trembling ripples of emotional fallout began to spread across Genoa City the moment Lily Winters walked into the room and saw something she was never meant to see. For days she had felt uneasy, sensing that Kane Ashby's sudden determination to rebuild his life carried an undercurrent of desperation she couldn't fully identify. She had convinced herself it wasn't her concern anymore, that whatever Kane chose to do with his loneliness was his responsibility, not hers. But all of that resolve cracked in an instant when she found Kane and Phyllis Summers in a moment that looked far too intimate to be innocent, caught in the kind of charged, emotionally exposed position that left no room for misinterpretation. It wasn't simply proximity or awkward timing, it was the unmistakable tension, the unspoken invitation, the electricity lingering in the air the moment Lily stepped inside. The sight pierced through her composure like a blade. Lily felt a surge of disbelief, then a sickening heaviness, as though she had been watching Kane drift toward the edge of a cliff without realizing he had already stepped off. She had warned herself not to care, not to feel, but her heart reacted before her mind could remind her of everything they had survived, and everything that had already destroyed them. She knew Kane wanted their family back, knew he longed for reconciliation, but this? This was the kind of betrayal that sealed fates. Any chance Kane might have had to rebuild trust with her shattered instantly, not because Lily still wanted the life they once shared but because she had hoped, quietly and privately, that he would at least protect what remained of their dignity. Now she saw clearly that whatever part of him still claimed to love her was tangled with impulses he barely controlled. And in that moment, Lily felt something inside her close permanently. If Kane had been searching for the final blow that would eliminate any hope between them, this was it. Meanwhile, across town, Noah Newman experienced an entirely different kind of revelation, one that was less emotional and more existential. For weeks he had tried to convince himself that Nick and Sharon were overreacting, projecting fear where there was none, misreading Mitch Bacall's intentions. He wanted to believe that the darkness in Mitch's past had nothing to do with the present, that the shadows surrounding the man were just remnants of old stories with no power over his life now. But denial can only survive so long when danger breathes down your neck. It finally hit him with brutal clarity: his parents had been right all along. Matt Clark, Mitch Bacall, had not changed. He had not softened. He had not forgiven. He was still the same calculating predator he had always been, the same man who built his life around vengeance, manipulation, and the thrill of dismantling the people he believed owed him something. And now Noah understood that he was one of those people. Matt hadn't just drifted into his orbit, he had targeted him. He was laying groundwork, pulling strings, eroding Noah's safety and stability in small, strategic ways that suddenly made horrifying sense. Noah realized that every warning, every uneasy glance from Sharon, every stern insistence from Nick had been an act of protection, not paranoia. And although he would not die, because life rarely gave up main characters so easily, the threat was real. Matt was planning something, a punishment, a reckoning, a slow dismantling of Noah's world until the young man understood exactly what it meant to be on Matt Clark's list. The discovery left Noah with a chilling awareness: danger wasn't coming. It was already here. Back in Genoa City, anticipation continued to build toward a very different kind of event, one filled not with fear but with hope, nostalgia, and long-awaited healing. Danny Romalotti and Christine Blair were preparing to walk into the next chapter of their lives, one defined by renewal rather than chaos. Their wedding, set for November 21st, was more than a ceremony. It was the culmination of years of detours, heartbreak, reconciliations, missed chances, and rediscovered love. For many in town, their union represented something almost sacred, proof that even in a city built on betrayal and reinvention, some stories still circled back home. Christine moved through the days with a glow that came not from extravagance but from certainty. Danny, equally grounded and joyful, looked forward to a future that felt calmer, sweeter, anchored by the stability they had both fought so hard to earn. And the wedding promised a celebration of history as much as romance. Gina Roma's return carried with it echoes of Danny's family roots, threads of memory coming full circle. Nina Webster's reappearance brought warmth, loyalty, and the rare presence of someone who understood Christine's deepest transitions. Their arrivals would turn the Romalotti-Blair wedding into a moment not just for the couple but for the entire community, a reminder of who they had been, who they had become, and what remained unbroken despite decades of turmoil. Yet even as preparations continued, the contrast between the serenity of the wedding and the storm brewing around the rest of Genoa City grew sharper. Lily's shock, Noah's danger, Matt's looming threat, and Audra's hidden secrets created a stark divide between those walking into stability and those bracing for collapse. And that, more than anything, reflected the nature of life in this town. While one love story found peace, others spiraled deeper into conflict. While some danced toward joy, others stood on the edge of unraveling. While Danny and Christine prepared to say their vows, someone else's world was quietly, inevitably falling apart. And as November 21st approached, the city seemed to inhale, waiting for the moment when celebration and catastrophe would inevitably intersect, because in Genoa City, weddings were never just weddings. They were turning points. Catalysts. Moments where joy illuminated shadows that refused to stay hidden forever.